Right friends, welcome back to questions and answers discussion. Today I think majority of the questions pertains to economic survey, not all but majority, and let us go ahead. Look at the following sentences. During the past 5 years, gross fixed capital formation is reducing, absolutely correct. If you compare it with 2011-12 to 2016-17, it reduced by around 7% or so. The biggest worry for India is gross fixed capital formation is reducing. Gross fixed capital formation is otherwise known as investment expenditure. When investment is there in creation of capital assets, then it will benefit the future generations. So, for any country's growth, this investment expenditure must be substantial. So, the first one is correct, second one is wrong. So, during the past 5 years, gross fixed capital formation is reducing. Gross fixed capital formation is basically investment expenditure only. Animal spirits is quite often in the news. Quite often we come across this word animal spirits. Today I have taken some words, animal spirits, frugal innovation, like that. So, what is the meaning of animal spirits? I explained here, please go through them. It is coined by Keynes and it refers to emotional mindsets. Emotional mindsets means leave about calculations, mathematical calculations, leave about rational thinking. By leaving about those things, if my decision is based on emotional mindset, or you can say a spontaneous urge to action rather than inaction, it is very easy to sit silent without any action, but it prompts action instead of inaction. And it is not because of outcome of the calculation of various quantitative benefits and quantitative probabilities, but it is based on emotional mindsets. Second one is, it is built around the presumption that confidence can drive economic growth. Most important, confidence can drive economic growth, and it is all about how the human psychology drives the economic growth, and it differs from conventional economic analysis which confines itself to rational quantifiable facts, right. So, animal spirits meaning please understand. Now, let us look at frugal innovation. What is the meaning of frugal innovation? Frugal innovation is the ability to generate considerably more business and social value by reducing the costs. Costs must be reduced so as to increase the business and social value. And the interesting point here is, the goods must be made available, goods and services must be made available to the people at lesser costs, as less as possible. This is the mantra of development, business development in developing countries. So, frugal innovation is, it is reducing the complexity and cost of the goods as well as production, and it has got more relevance when we look at developing countries, not developed countries. When you look at developing countries, this has got more relevance. 1 and 2 correct, third one wrong. And here it is delivering more value to the customers at a lower cost, and it has got significance when you look at developing countries, not developed countries. Then Washington consensus, of course this is from economic survey and is quite often in the news. What is Washington consensus? Washington consensus is this IMF, World Bank, please do not forget, IMF, World Bank are known as Bretton Woods sisters. These two Bretton Woods sisters, because of the Bretton Woods conference in 1944, they came into focus, and these two institutions along with the US Treasury, they sat together and they devised 10-point economic policy which is considered to be the standard reform package for the developing countries. So, for the developing countries, it is the prescription, 10-point prescription devised by the 3 organizations you can say, and these deliberate on the policies pertaining to macroeconomic stabilization, economic opening with respect to both trade and investment, at the same time expansion of market forces within the domestic economy, right friends. So, all 1, 2, 3. So, if someone is talking about Washington consensus, be cautious about that. Indian economy is sometimes considered to be suffering from structural problems. Look at the sentences. What is the meaning of structural problems? These are deep rooted problems. If you look at our legal system, it is taking years together. Lethargy and corruption, that is deep rooted in our country's public sector or government sector, that is red tapeism, right. So, these are prevalent in our country, they are deep rooted and at the same time poor infrastructure. So, these are all categorized as structural deficiencies in the system, and the important point to note is structural deficiencies cannot be overcome within single year or 2 years. Structural deficiencies require years together to come out of the problem, right. So, structural deficiencies are deep rooted problems in the country, right. So, the first one is correct. Second one is, these are the deficiencies which can be corrected in short term, absolutely wrong. 1 is correct, 2 is wrong. So, please do not forget our monetary policy, fiscal policy, people talk about dovish monetary policy, people talk about economic stimulus, fiscal stimulus, giving more money for consumption expenditure. All these things are undertaken so as to give short term stimulus to the economy. So, they are, you can say, they are short term measures, but when you look at the structural deficiencies, taking out structural deficiencies, this is the long term measure to give boost to the economy. You can say 1991 new economic policy is to correct the structural deficiencies, or you can say is to take out the structural deficiencies. I hope you understood. The indecisiveness with regard to the domain of public policy by a government or state. The indecisiveness with regard to the domain of the public policy by a government or state is known as policy paralysis. Vested interest, what is the meaning? Vested interest means if I have some personal benefit while taking the government decisions, if I have some hidden personal benefit, that is vested interest. What is policy paralysis? What is red tape? Please look here. Red tapeism is the practice of requiring excessive paperwork and tedious procedures before official action. Huge procedures and excessive paperwork and officials sticking to the rules, and they are, in fact, people will become fed up with the red tapeism. So, red tapeism leads to corruption, you can say. I want to do the things fast, but there are several rules one after the other, so as to avoid those rules, so as to avoid that long drawn process, I may take up corruption, or you can say I may resort to bribing somebody. So, red tapeism, corruption, these are the traits of government sector in developing countries. And here, what is policy paralysis? In fact, the UPA 2 government was dubbed as having policy paralysis. What is the, I am not going to the politics, and what is the meaning of policy paralysis? Policy paralysis is government's inability to act or function properly, or we can say it is indecisiveness. So, if someone talks about policy paralysis, it is the situation where important laws and reforms are not passed because of lack of commitment on the part of the government. So, this word is very, very important, policy paralysis. And please understand, these are the things what we are discussing will definitely benefit you in the mains examination also, because mains is nothing but you have to use your general ingenuity in writing the answers. If you have more word power, if you have more knowledge, then automatically things will flow with good words, right. So, this is causes of policy paralysis. Then look at the following sentences. Monetary and fiscal policies deal with short term economic fluctuations, absolutely correct. Fiscal policy primarily deals with stabilization policies including taxation as well as spending, absolutely correct. Monetary policy looks at changes in interest rates and money supply. So, I differentiated between fiscal policy and monetary policy here, absolutely correct. The structural changes required to stabilize the economy are long term in nature, and the new economic policy 1991 is primarily aimed at ensuring the policy changes by looking at the ownership of enterprises, management of public finances, then these social security nets, labor markets, etc. right. So, please look into this monetary and fiscal policies. Fiscal policy, monetary policy difference, and what is the difference of fiscal and monetary policies with regard to structural deficiencies, or you can say eliminating structural deficiencies, right. The tendency of the banks to lend firms the money to pay their interest obligations quite often is known as evergreening. Evergreening has got two meanings in economy. Evergreening is, we discussed when we are discussing about patents. In patents, especially in pharmaceutical sector, the firms after the completion of patent period, they come up with minor innovation. The product they will change with minor innovation and incremental innovation, you can say, and that is known as evergreening, right. And there is one section of Patents Act which prevents evergreening, and banks also sometimes may take up this evergreening because they do not want the loan to be dubbed as non-performing asset. If loan becomes a non-performing asset, then they are answerable to the bank management. That is why sometimes what banks will do, banks will lend money to the firms so as to keep it evergreening, or you can say so as to allow it not to become NPA. We often hear about twin balance sheet problem. Twin balance sheet problem is the impairment of balance sheets. Impairment of balance sheets are nothing but assets and liabilities, and when bank has given loan to some steel company, when steel company is not paying back, both the balance sheets of the bank as well as steel company will be impaired, right, will be in bad health, you can say. That is known as a twin balance sheet problem. Because of public sector banks, not only public sector banks, but also some infrastructure and metal companies, they are also suffering because we are not able to solve this problem of bad loans for the past 6 to 7 years. That is all twin balance sheet problem. People have impression that banks are only suffering. It is not so. Not only banks, the sufferers are this infrastructure companies also. It is altogether different matter. Some people may be doing willful defaulting. I am not going into those details. Then twin balance sheet problem is the impairment of balance sheets of both the banks as well as companies. Then the twin balance sheet problem has caused a serious drag on the Indian GDP growth. Absolutely wrong. So far, there is no serious drag on the Indian GDP growth. Normally, under normal circumstances, this could have affected growth also too badly. No doubt, some growth is affected because of the private investment is not forthcoming, but if you look at it, it has not affected that badly in comparison to the countries previously under similar circumstances. So, from that perspective, this statement you have to view it. somebody may differ with me, but overall if you see, in comparison with the similar problems faced by other countries, maybe East Asian countries sometime back in 1990s, when they faced the crisis, then it dragged the economy badly, but now the twin balance sheet problem has not caused a serious drag. It has its some effect, no doubt about it, but it has not caused a serious drag on the Indian GDP growth. The public sector banks have more stress than private sector banks, absolutely correct, right. Look at the following sentences. The state capacity in delivering essential services. This is state capacity of delivering health, education, sanitation, water supply. In fact, that is normally the responsibility of the governments. Effective service delivery. This is a service delivery word quite often mentioned in economic survey. So, the state capacity in delivering essential services such as health and education improved enormously after new economic policy. Absolutely wrong. The unfortunate aspect after new economic policy is there is no improvement in the state capacity with regard to the provision of services, essential services like health, education, water supply, sanitation. There is not much improvement, or you can say the state capacity has not improved after new economic policy of 1991. Absolutely wrong. Indian welfare spending misallocation was reduced substantially after the new economic policy. That means the districts with more poor started getting funds higher than the districts which are having less number of poor. Absolutely wrong. So, here as per economic survey, the districts which have more poor people, they are getting lesser resources. That means there is a dichotomy, you can say. Normally more money is expected or much more money is required for the poor districts, but unfortunately poor districts are getting lesser money in comparison to the developed districts or more developed districts, right. So, here this statement is also wrong. Right. So, these two are unfortunate aspects after new economic policy of 1991. So, both are wrong. Look at the following with regard to demonetization. Cash incentive sectors like agriculture, real estate, jewelry were affected in the months subsequent to demonetization. Absolutely correct. Cash intensive sectors were affected. Second one, in the long run, demonetization may lead to more formalization of economy. Demonetization may lead to more formalization of economy. This is the government's expectation, because now the cash supply definitely somehow they have reduced it. Cash in circulation they might have reduced because no official figures are available, and at the same time government is going towards digitization. That is another aspect. Then cash circulation is reduced with making that for single payment cash should not exceed rupees 2 lakhs. So, because of all these things, or you can say in the long run, demonetization and subsequent developments by the government may lead to more formalization of economy, and this is government's expectation, right. Hopefully something may happen in this direction. Next one, real estate prices are expected to fall because of formalization. When the unaccounted money is reduced in real estate, then what happen? Then real estate prices are expected to fall, not rise. More and more formalization of real estate sector will lead to the fall in prices of real estate. So, 1 and 2 correct. Pick up the incorrect one when one analyzes after effects of demonetization. Demonetization shifts the resources from private sector to the government. When unaccounted money has not returned to the government, then government's liabilities will be reduced. So, it will have redistributive effect from the black money holders, that means rich people, to the poor people. right. So, demonetization shifts resources from private sector to the government, and it is the most important redistributive effect from the poor people, from the rich people to the poor people, because when the unaccounted money has not returned to the banking system, and remember there are no accurate figures how much has not returned to the banking system, but let us assume part of it has not returned to the banking system, then what happens? Government's liabilities will be reduced, because of which what happens? When government's liabilities are reduced, then government will be in a position to redistribute that to the poorer people. So, demonetization has got redistributive effect to the extent unaccounted money not returned to the coffers of banks. Then there will be wealth gain for RBI, or you can say Government of India, because of unreturned cash. Because of unreturned cash, the liabilities are reduced. Accordingly, there will be wealth gain for the government. In the short term, it decreased liquidity in the banking system. Absolutely wrong. Demonetization in fact increased liquidity in the banking system. Market stabilization scheme bonds were increased to sterilize the excess liquidity. So, C is the wrong option. The economic survey mentioned public sector asset rehabilitation agency, and look at the following sentences. It would be a centralized agency for purchasing bad loans from the banking system, and after that what they will do? They will work them out, whether debt will be converted to equity or they may be sold in auctions. All those things will be done by public sector asset rehabilitation agency. Then what will happen? Banks will be free of the problem. All this burden will be put on public sector asset rehabilitation agency. Then the financial health can be restored and banks can concentrate on the critical task of making the new loans, right. So, here 1 and 2, banks will be free of the problem, then the financial health can be restored and banks can concentrate on the critical task of making the new loans. So, all here only 2 options are given. So, 1 and 2 are correct. Then if one looks at the states as a whole, which of the following is considered to be one of the biggest failures in independent India, or you can say after new economic policy, which can be called as one of the biggest failures? This competitive federalism is happening, states are competing for investments, that is competitive federalism. Sorry, I am talking about cooperative federalism. Cooperative federalism means states are coming together in taking the decisions. GST is classic example of cooperative federalism. Competitive federalism, states are attracting direct investments, states are competing with one another. So, competitive federalism is working well in our country, at least for some states. Then competitive populism, states are giving the doles in a competitive way. Of course, it is going, maximum is going to the poor people. It may not be the biggest failure, you can say, though it has got its own weakness, because when states are going for competitive populism, what happens? The investment, capital investment will be reduced. That is different story. But the biggest failure is competitive service delivery is not there. You can say service delivery is not competitive in our country. Almost majority of the states are failed in proper implementation of service delivery like health, education, water supply, sanitation, right. So, this is, you can say, the biggest failure in independent India. Then analyze the following sentences. If one looks at the capital available with RBI, RBI is one of the highly capitalized central banks. This is as per economic survey. RBI is one of the highly capitalized central banks in comparison to its peers. It is one among very few countries which have high equity as percentage of central bank's balance sheet. So, central bank RBI is highly capitalized. this is fact. Then around 70% of RBI's assets are in the form of net foreign assets. This is also factually correct. So, around 70% of RBI's assets are in the form of net foreign assets, and if rupee appreciates, the capital of Reserve Bank of India will be decreased, not increased. So, because they are being held in net foreign assets, when rupee appreciates, then capital of Reserve Bank of India will erode. So, third one is wrong. So, 1 and 2 correct. So, this assumed significance because of the fact that Reserve Bank of India, that economic survey proposed part of the capital to be utilized for public sector asset rehabilitation agency. For the capital base of public sector asset rehabilitation agency, economic survey stated that part of the capital of Reserve Bank of India can be used for para, right. Look at the following sentences. This is from economic survey. Apparels create more number of jobs per lack of investment. Absolutely correct. More than the textiles, apparel sector create maximum number of jobs per lack of investment. Leather goods and footwear also has got higher potential for generating jobs per lack of investment, but lesser than apparels. So, apparels, leather goods, footwear, so these have got highest job creation potential. The highest of all is apparels. Then apparel sector has got the least potential for creation of female jobs. Absolutely wrong. So, please understand, apparel sector has got the highest potential for creation of female jobs per lack of investment. So, these things are as per economic survey. So, here the answer is 1 and 2. Look into the next one. If you look at the external debt of the economy, look at the following sentences. Here the share of the non-government debt is higher than government debt. If you look at external debt, please understand these things. The share of non-government debt is more than the government debt. Second point is, most of the Indian debt is dollar denominated, followed by Indian rupee. Please do not forget about masala bonds. And when somebody is talking about masala bonds, so please do not forget IFC. Then majority of the external debt is long term, 2 and 3 correct. So, what will happen when majority of the external debt is long term? The economy is safe from external problems, right. So, the share of non-government debt is more than government debt. The concept of universal basic income is gaining momentum, and look at the following sentences. It is the idea that a just society needs to guarantee to each individual a minimum income. The citizens born in this country, or you can say the citizens of the country, must be assured of some income, and they should lead basic life with basic goods and with dignity. Every person should live. That is the concept of universal basic income. So, here which provides the necessary material foundation for a life with access to basic goods and dignity. Universal basic income must be unconditional and universal. If you are a rich person, then government take it away as taxes, that is different story. So, universal basic income is unconditional and universal. Every person should have a right to basic income to cover their needs just by virtue of being citizens of the country. So, all three correct. So, please be cautious about universal basic income. At the same time, public sector asset rehabilitation agency, these things are mentioned in economic survey. The principle that internet service providers and governments regulating the internet, treating all the data on the internet the same without any discrimination is net neutrality. All of you are familiar with this. Then the next one is, which of the following countries have overtaken India in textiles / apparels exports? Here Bangladesh and Vietnam. Bangladesh and Vietnam have gone ahead, and government is now making many efforts to take India ahead of Bangladesh and Vietnam by 2019 or so, right. So, let us conclude this Q&A session. We discussed some important questions today. This is 23rd session. Please do join for 24th, the day after tomorrow, and we will complete 30 by Friday 16th. One we will upload separately, because as per the schedule it is coming 29, but we will complete 30. That is the commitment from Learning Space. And somebody is asking about economic survey. Economic survey 5 already there, 6, 7, 8 I am going to upload before this weekend. Economy also we are expediting this week, at least 4 modules will be uploaded in economy, right friends. So, with this let us conclude today's Q&A discussion. Have a nice day. Thank you.